From the Daily Mail, leaked files expose how U.S. pediatricians accuse their own professional body of pushing a harmful drugs-first approach on trans teens and of deliberately blocking moves to change the rules. This is a crazy story. We've had a detransitioner on Timcast IRL talking about how they felt they were groomed into being trans. In this story, there are posts from people who say they feel the same way. It's shocking, but to many people who have been following this, I don't think you're at all surprised. I will say perhaps people are somewhat surprised. Doctors internally are trying to resist this, but are being blocked. But I'll tell you first and foremost as we get into this. On the internet, there are harsh rules about transgender ideology. Twitter, for instance, famously bans people for misgendering or dead naming and things like that. It was explained to me by the CEO at the time, Jack Dorsey, and their, I believe their general counsel or top lawyer, Vijay Gadde. Well, they're trying to prevent suicides and things like that. They're not. These people who are talking about detransitioning are expressing very serious negative thoughts, we'll put it that way, over having their lives destroyed as they explain it. Here's what's happening. For most people who are suffering or experiencing some kind of dysphoria, they go online. What do they see? Nothing but good things, because all of the bad things have been banned. They don't learn about potential side effects or risks. They undergo treatments which are irreversible and then realize they were not warned of this. That's what they are saying, not my opinion. These people then express suicidal ideation, which we are trying to stop. And that's the big issue. Twitter claimed that's what they were doing. Instead, they've created a pipeline where you can only hear good things. And then later you realize through these other forums, hey, wait a minute. Not everybody is happy. And you need real informed consent. Let's read the story from the Daily Mail. They say, pediatricians across America are at war with their own professional body over controversial puberty-blocking drugs routinely handed to teens wanting to change gender. The top child health experts accuse the American Academy of Pediatrics, AAP, of pushing harmful drugs on transgender-identifying youngsters, according to damning leaked documents. Disturbingly, the documents also reveal experts believe the AAP is deliberately silencing internal criticism by blocking moves for a crucial policy review. The papers, leaked by a whistleblower, expose how rank-and-file AAP members across the U.S. are slamming the Academy's shoddy drug and hormones-first approach to trans-identifying teens. They insist many would benefit from counseling or therapy instead. Now, I want to stop. That's what we are seeing in Europe. Why is the U.S. different? And urge the professional body to follow a more cautious approach currently being adopted by similar bodies in other countries. Fast-tracking adolescents into powerful drug cocktails takes a huge toll on young bodies and can lead to sterility and osteoporosis, critics say. For many teens, transitioning is celebrated, but others regret the treatment and seek reversals. And this is the important factor. Across the internet, there have been attempts at producing or generating forums where people can talk about their experiences, negative consequences, but they get banned. There is one subreddit right now that has not yet been shut down called Detrans, where people are talking about how they underwent these treatments and they regret it. I'll tell you, I saw something crazy I think it was in Florida. They had a hearing recently to determine whether or not they would ban sex change therapies, treatments, medical drugs, and things like that for minors. And a detransitioner spoke up saying that their life had been destroyed because they were fast-tracked. We had Helena Kirshner on Timcast IRL. She said that when she turned 18, she went to Planned Parenthood and boom, they just handed her the maximum dose testosterone, just like that. And she regretted it. It was a mistake, and she was on testosterone for 2 years. They say the AAP says its guidelines to reinforce the gender a youth selects including through drugs, cross-sex hormones, and eventually surgery, are evidence-based and that it's open to collaborative conversations on policy. But angry AAP members say the Academy changed its rules to block a member-drafted resolution to launch a policy review. It led to the review being sidelined at the Academy's leadership conference, which ended in Chicago on Monday. Instead, members took the unusual step of airing their concerns in the comment section for a separate resolution in the AAP's members-only website. In the comments leaked to dailymail.com, AAP members said the Academy was endorsing great harm, that its care package for trans-identifying teens was based on scant and shoddy evidence, and that doling out drugs and hormones was unsafe and unsustainable. Before promulgating gender-affirming care, with all of its ethical implications, irreversible bodily changes, sterility, etc., don't we want to be sure this is the best path, wrote one anxious pediatrician. Take a look at these comments. I want to read some of these comments for you. This is very important, my friends. Doctors outright rejecting these policies. One person said, I vote no. I support Resolution 27, not this one. The AAP is endorsing great harm without high quality or long-term evidence of benefit. In May 2022, redacted, a transgender woman and the county's leading vaginoplasty surgeon reported at, again, redacted conference, that 100% of males put on the affirmative care Dutch protocol lose all sexual sensation and function. They are stripped of the ability to ever have sexual intimacy or fall in love. We know from other research that most of those kids would likely grow up to be gay. Is this what we endorse? As pediatricians, the UK, Sweden, Finland, France, Australia, and New Zealand are all backing away from the model supported by the AAP. Online sites where detransitioners discuss the medical harm done to them are literally growing by the thousands every month. Resolution 27 calls for a long overdue evidence-based review of AAP policy. I fear that this resolution would further cement it in place. Wow. There's more. One person wrote, vote no. As I am unable to comment on Resolution 27, I strongly urge the organization adopt policies to make statements concerning treatment of gender dysphoria in children and youths only after an open and methodological sound process to ensure these statements are based on medical evidence rather than ideology. I am objecting to my inability to comment on and therefore endorse Resolution 27. There needs to be more sound research into the long-term benefits and risks of treatment of transgender children before this can be widely accepted and adopted. What's basically happening is these doctors can't actually comment on a review about these puberty blockers and sex change surgeries for children, so they're using a different article to comment on. There's a few more. I won't read all of them. They say another member said there was no good long-term outcome data for those who undergo the arduous physical process of transitioning, and pointed to the 37,000 members of an online forum for regretful detransitioners, as they are known. What is most needed right now is better research to make sure we do the right thing for our patients, wrote the pediatrician, who, like others, we are not identifying, as such views have led to online harassment in the past. Others bashed the AAP for stonewalling Resolution 27, in which 5 members called for a rigorous systematic review of the Academy's 2018 gender-affirming policy, saying growing numbers of transitioners regret their treatment and seek reversals. Unfortunately for them, often it is permanent. There's videos of women with beards explaining that they can never get rid of the facial hair they grew when they were given cross-sex hormones. One AAP member complained they were unable to comment on the document. Another said they no longer trust the AAP as the resolution was removed and debate on the matter was silenced egregiously. Quote, there is no open dialogue on these medical treatments by the AAP. Input from the membership must occur. They mentioned Resolution 27, the motion that questioned AAP's gender affirmation policy. They say 5 pediatricians in March issued a resolution calling for a rigorous systematic review of the AAP's 2018 gender affirmation policy, warning of growing numbers of detransitioners who come to regret their treatment and seek a reversal. The paper describes ever more clinicians and parents of trans-identifying youth now expressing deep concerns about the use of medical and surgical interventions without sufficient exploratory psychotherapy. Like policy rethinks in Britain, Finland, and other European nations, the review should cover the safety, efficacy, and risks of childhood social transition, puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and surgery. It did not advance at the meeting in Chicago. It was the only resolution affected by new procedural rules introduced by the Academy earlier this year. The AAP says it changed the rules before it saw the troublesome resolution. They go on to say, the Academy has some 67,000 members. 5 members wrote the resolution, which we just read. Julia Mason, an Oregon-based pediatrician, and one of the 5 authors, said ever more colleagues across the U.S. wanted to slow down the mass handouts of puberty blockers and spend more time evaluating trans-identifying teens. I'm really disappointed the AAP is being driven by ideology rather than evidence. Mason, also an advisor to the Society for Evidence-Based Gender Medicine, told DailyMail.com. They're embarrassed that they've let young activist doctors get them on record in support of gender-affirming care, and now they can't backtrack. They've suppressed my efforts and come up with new rules to hide what we're trying to say from rank-and-file pediatricians. Several members said the U.S. should be guided by policy shifts in Europe, where health chiefs in several countries have backtracked after carrying out their own policy reviews. Britain's health service recently decided to close the country's only gender identity clinic for children after a damning review and a slew of allegations by former staff and patients about rushing young people onto treatment. A major Swedish clinic last year stopped giving puberty blockers and hormones to children. And Finland's health chiefs decided that psychotherapy, not drugs and hormones, should be the first-line treatment for gender dysphoric youngsters. They go on to mention some rather shocking statements from people who had transitioned that I'm going to read for you, because these people need to be heard if we are to protect a marginalized community, those who suffer from gender dysphoria. From the D-Trans subreddit, they write, I just want to die. Cry for help. They go on. I destroyed my life with puberty blockers. With the spotlight on this issue now, all sorts of studies are coming out showing how dangerous they are. They cause brain swelling and vision loss, amongst other things. It all makes sense now why I'm dealing with a myriad of health issues. Doctors are helpless and either don't know what to do with me or tell me it's all in my head. I'm basically a science experiment at this point. I'm only 24. I can't imagine suffering another 50 or so years like this. I just wish all this information coming out existed back in 2014 when I made the horrible decision of going on them. It could have saved my life. We desperately want to save lives. I get it. But there are some deeply evil people that don't care. Now, I fully believe there are many activists who genuinely want to save lives and are concerned that transgender youth will commit suicide unless they receive affirmation. But we're learning now that is not the case across the board. And all they're doing is actually hurting other people. So we need a deep cultural reevaluation to make sure we're protecting marginalized communities. One person wrote, and this is interesting, how do I keep myself from making the mistake of a lifetime? They write, growing up, and even now, I was a short, scrawny, painfully shy, meek, and nerdy boy. I found myself struggling with these things as I came of age. And the confluence of my nerdy interests plus growing involvement in left-wing politics led me to fall down the rabbit hole of gender ideology. I have had for some time a growing belief that gender ideology, as it pertains to men, is a social contagion, with the consequence of yet little understood self-harm. It preys on vulnerable young men and promises a panacea to their personal issues that it seldom actually delivers on. Instead, it deepens them. And that's what's happening to me. I'm really struggling. I can't bear to live in my own skin. I am bitterly disappointed when everywhere I go, I find myself read as male. I have, as they would say, gender dysphoria, but I don't actually have it. I'm simulating having it. And I know I am because I never dealt with any of this before I fell into the clutches of this cult. Wow, for a person to say this. It does cause me enough suffering that it leads me in moments of weakness to seriously consider transitioning. I know myself, and I know how that will end poorly, but I am worried I may do it. How do I get this stuff out of my head? How do I feel comfortable in my own skin again? How do I feel comfortable owning up to my challenges and being myself and not harboring self-destructive delusions? I don't know. I think we need doctors to help people. Parents have complained about being sidelined as their children make rash decisions about changing gender, which are reinforced by clinicians who follow AAP guidelines and provide drugs to those as young as 13. Last month, California teenager Chloe Cole spoke out against the rush to affirm youngsters with drugs and hormones. She told a medical panel how she was encouraged as a 13-year-old to take puberty blockers and later have surgery that irreversibly and painfully damaged her body as she transitioned to Leo, a boy. In her testimony, she warned of the dangers of online LGBTQ activism, unreliable therapists, and a medical process and its reversal that left her unlikely to be able to have children and unable to breastfeed. I mean, that's permanent. Here we have, likewise, Alia Ismail, 27 from Michigan, has told of how she underwent a medical transition involving hormones and a double mastectomy to become Isa, but then switched back as she was unhappy with the new identity. Look, this is not something like trying on an outfit, but this is what Helena Kirshner told us. When she would go online, she was told that because she liked these fantasy articles of gay men, that means she's probably trans. And so they said to her, why don't you cut your hair short and see how you feel? I mean, a short haircut, it'll grow back. It's not permanent. Cut your hair short, and if you feel good, maybe that means you're trans. So she did. I'm not sure if she was saying she did or that people did, but what happens then is a person would cut their hair short, post photos, and get lavished with positive attention about how cool you look. Whoa, you look so cool. It feels good. And you're like, wow, how do you feel? I feel really good. Dude, if you feel really good and you didn't feel this way before, maybe you're trans. So then they'd say, why don't you try boys' clothing? I mean, look, you just try it on, take a picture, see how you feel. It's not permanent. And so they do. They try putting on other clothing, posting photos, and everyone goes, whoa, you look so cool. You're so cool. Feels good, doesn't it? To be called cool, to have someone say, you're the coolest ever. Wow, you look amazing. You're so handsome. And so they say, do you really feel good now? And they say, yeah, I feel really good. I wonder why. Well, it's because they're love bombing you. Then they say, dude, if you feel really good and you didn't feel this way before, you're probably trans. They're grooming them. That's what they're doing. Then they say, why don't you take the hormones? Take the hormones. You already know you feel better this way, but that is permanent. And these people have come out and explained that's what's happened to them. And they didn't like it. And they wanted to go back to the way they were. Unfortunately, for many of these people, it's often permanent. They go on to say, the Academy's advice guides the work of some 67,000 members and the gender-affirming policies of President Joe Biden's administration. Its policy echoes the World Professional Association of Transgender Health and other bodies. Take a look at this. Do you support state laws or policies that prevent transgender youth from accessing gender transition medical care? Overwhelmingly, people oppose this. That is to say, most people want children to be able to undergo sex changes if they so desire. Among Democrats, obviously, you've got 17% somewhat opposing and 50% strongly opposed. Only 14% of Democrats support laws banning child sex changes. Among Republicans, somehow and shockingly, 24% oppose laws that would ban child sex changes. And even among independents, the plurality, you've got 17% somewhat opposing and 20% strongly opposing laws that would prevent child sex change medical intervention. I think that's just outright crazy. What's fascinating? They say a majority of U.S. adults say gender is determined by sex assigned at birth. Republicans, 86%, say it is assigned at birth. 61% of Democrats say your gender can be different from your sex assigned at birth. The fascinating thing is the way they describe this. Assigned? No, it is observed. Often observations can be incorrect, but no one is assigned a sex. That's the way they're breaking things down. And even this poll is busted. Your gender arguably is assigned, I suppose, if they're making an argument about social constructs, but not really. When a person is born, they are observed to be male or female. You see the way they've described this? That's how they make the change. And over time, this will become the norm unless conservatives win in the schools. That's fascinating. Among 18 to 20-year-olds, it's 50-50, thinking that it could go, either way. But overwhelmingly, from 30, actually it says 18 to 20, that makes no sense, because then they go 30 to 39, then they go 50 to 64. What are these age brackets? You're skipping 40 to 49 and 29 to and 20 to 21 to 29. What are you doing here? Anyway, most people don't agree with this. But the question itself is broken. The first question is, do you think sex is assigned? No, it's observed. That's a fact statement. Changes need to happen if we're going to save lives and protect a marginalized community. So saith the marginalized community themselves. So I hope the left pays attention, but I don't think they care. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 4 p.m. over at youtube.com/Timcast. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.